So my name is Mike Becker. Today we're going to go through two things. We're going to have a look at some touchdown autos and we're going to have a look at some forced landings. First of all, who's just hands up if this is the first time you've seen this presentation. I've got some newbies in here. Excellent. I can bullshit as much as I like. All right, so if I speak too fast because I speak properly and if you can't understand me, slow me down. Please feel free to ask questions, speak up. All right, this is not just a give and a receive. We want you guys to be part of this. So, touchdown autos. This is a guide to crashing gently. So this is me. Haven't updated this slide for a few years, which is good. Been flying since 1985, mainly in the civil sector. We do a bit of stuff for the military at the moment. And really my main focus has been training. So the course aim today, we want to discuss and explain the autorotation to a full touchdown. We want to have a look at manoeuvring. And once we've sort of spoken about the autorotation by itself in isolation, we'll start tying it together with forced landings and precautionary landings and start getting a discussion going on those sorts of things. So, we want to have a look at the entry to an auto. We want to have a look at the descent, the flare, the termination, making the spot, and discussing the forced landing. Now this year it's been a bit quiet around HAI. Last year and the year before there was a lot more discussion going on about cyclic before collective and collective before cyclic and a whole bunch of things. So if you guys have any concerns about when we're going through the presentation of the order that we do things and how we explain things, say your bit. Okay, don't be afraid to say your bit, and then I could stand corrected, or I might be able to enlighten you and give you some more information. I'm not going to say there's only one way to do this, because there's not one way to do it. All I'm doing is giving you a standard way to do it based on our experience. Right, okay, so roles. My role today is I'm a facilitator. I'm a teacher. I want to keep everyone on topic, so if you now start telling me about a story about how your cat was in the left-hand seat while you did an auto or something, I'm not really interested. So I'll keep you on topic. We want to listen and share each other's experiences. Your role today is I want you to have an inquiring mind. I just don't want you to sit there like a zombie going yes and no and just accepting things. I want you to question some stuff if you want to question some stuff. Ask questions. I'll keep you on topic. Participate and share your experiences. Okay, first of all, please stand up if you're a helicopter pilot. For those of you that aren't, I'm sorry. Stay standing up. No, stay standing up. Okay, I assume all of you are either a private or a commercial pilot. Would that be correct? Yeah, this is yes, this is no. Yeah, private. Or if you're not one of those, you may be a student. Okay. Now, can you please sit down if you have never done an autorotation? One person sits down. Excellent. You'll be amazed at how many people actually sit down in some of these presentations they've done right through the commercial, and they haven't really done an autorotation. They may have done a low-power descent with a bit of a flare at the bottom, but some people actually say they haven't done autorotations before. Please sit down if you have never done an autorotation that's resulted in a full touchdown to the ground with the engine back at idle. Okay, so now I've got some more people sitting down. So these are qualified pilots that haven't done a full touchdown auto all the way to the ground with the engine at idle. Okay, now I want you to remain standing if you've had a real event that's caused you to have a real autorotation. Okay, so not so many. So guys, I want you first of all give these guys a round of applause because they've survived. Now stay standing because I want to hear your story. Sir, can you tell me the story of your engine out or whatever caused you to put the thing on the ground?
I misunderstood a little bit on this was a for real auto-rotation.
Yep.
I did not actually get to the touchdown.
Okay.
But what happened was, and people can learn from this a bit too, I think you should. I had my Hughes 269 And I was just got my license in 1984, and I thought, wow, this is really cool. This helicopter can go to 13,000 feet. Maybe I should go there. I'd like to see what it looks like up there. So I headed on up there, and I got it started getting really slow for altitude.
No ADS-B transponders back then, I guess. So. No ADS-B transponders, so ATC's not concerned, you know.
So anyway,
Darwin Award coming up.
I kind of looked at, I'm probably going to run out of fuel before I get that high, because it's a long ways up. And so I decided to do an auto rotation coming down. And so I pushed my collective down, and the engine went idle, and it quit, because there's not enough air up there to idle. I didn't know that at the time. And so I was rather surprised. And so I just started, since I was up over my home valley with the flatlands and everything, I just started circling and trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do here? And I figured since I had my practice touchdown autos with my instructor, and I knew I could do a touchdown auto in the valley area there, I knew I wasn't going to get killed or even injured. So I thought, okay, well, what else can I do here? Well, I guess I can try to restart it. So I restarted the helicopter at 5,500 feet and flew back to my field.
Just as a point of interest, what height did you enter the auto?
What's that?
What height did you enter? What height did all this happen at start? 11,000, and you got the engine started at 5,500. 5,500. So it's a really interesting point to remember later on when we look at forced landings and we talk about engine restarts, 6,000 feet. To get the cognitive thing going in your brain, do a restart, actually go through some things and make it happen. And the 300 is pretty simple, just push a button and it should actually start. But we still lost 6,000 feet before that happened, so that's an interesting point.
Another thing you can learn from this experience too is that through the rational process, calm down, you're in an auto, are you going to get injured? No, it'll be okay. Bang up the ship? Yes, possibly. Okay, what can I do? Restart. Another interesting thing was there's a lot of noise. Even though you don't have your engine running, there's a lot of noise. I hit the starter and I looked at the RPM gauge and I see nothing happening. So I thought, okay, well, I'll hold the starter in until I land, because we'll see what happens. And so after a while, the RPM comes right up, and then in goes the mixture, and you're going. So it was one of those deals where it's an oddball start.
Yeah.
It's not normal, because you can't even hear the engine turn.
Beautiful.
You can't even hear it start, but you see an RPM go up. Okay.
Beautiful. Thanks for that. Sir. Jet Ranger? Jet Ranger? Was it a Jet Ranger? 500. Number one bearing in the compressor?
It was a number 5 bearing, oil starvation, wet lines that go up from the gearbox to the front and rupture the back, but still.
500. Tough job at low level because not a lot of inertia in those blades. Thank you, sir.
So there we were. North of the Arctic Circle, Alaska, middle of winter. In Longman. I've had this happen twice, 2 different places. Going out, 40 below zero, you get up in the morning, it's about 50 below, and you wait for it's 40 start getting it. Okay, we were flying out there and just cruising along, curious inside the equipment and stuff, and then equipment. So, landed on the snow, no damage to anything. Had the 205 come pick it up, take it to the camp. Replaced all the pieces and back in business.
What was the type of aircraft?
It was a fuel pump that
Yep. What was it? What was the aircraft? What type of aircraft? A llama. A llama. Okay, a French one. Gee, that's unusual. Okay, beautiful. Thank you very much. Sir.
Mine happened in a V model jet ranger. I was doing some power line work. We started out about 75 feet off the ground. I pulled away from the line. We were getting ready to go to another part of the project. Just as we got away from the line, experienced a tail drive failure. Didn't pick up on it as being a tail drive failure right away. Kind of assumed it was an LTE issue. Went through the standard LTE procedures to try to get it back. And after gaining some speed and she wasn't answering at all, I realized there was another problem. At that point, I basically broke all the rules that you're taught as to how to handle the situation, because my option was either the trees or the trees. So I tried to make option number 3. In the process, I gained the altitude I was looking for, but as you know, if you don't have the tail rotor to pull power, it gets kind of exciting. The camera that we had running at the time said that we took that ride for about 40 seconds before I finally decided that, you know, this is it. We're not going to find an empty spot anymore. And in an auto rotation, probably 150 feet. Stopped the turn before we got to the top. Obviously, I didn't make the ground. There was too many trees in the way. And we stuck at the top of the tree. And fortunately, we stuck up there instead of taking the ride down, because it would have been about a 140-foot lawn dart ride to the bottom. Where we got really lucky on that one.
Yep.
The takeaway of that, though, is, I guess, 2 things. Never stop flying aircraft. And sometimes it looks like you may as well. But stay with it no matter what. And then the second thing is obviously you don't practice for that. But I had, because of what I was doing, gone through that process mentally a lot of times. How would I handle it if I got stuck in that situation? I was flying power line, I was flying over the trees, and I knew my options were bad at best. And the muscle memory from doing that exercise in my head paid off that day. Because if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be talking to you right now.
Beautiful. Excellent story. Guarantee you he probably wasn't thinking, he's in.
Actually, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Because when I got to the trees, I was level, but as I entered the top, I pulled back.
Yes, your tail.
I sat there and tried to do a hover.
Beautiful.
Good question.
Key takeaway I like there is you spoke about muscle memory, which is really interesting. We can get into that in a minute. Sir.
Bill Jet Ranger, about 10 years ago, I was flying the ship, just came from engine overhaul. Had about an hour on it. Was flying commercially, northern Alberta, nothing but bush and trees. 3 heavy oil workers in the back. Took off, flying out to a job site. Bright sunny day, beautiful day. And at I was about 600 feet above the ground. The ship went from full power to flight idle. And at that point,
PC line.
there was nowhere to land, but over there a little ways was a cut line that I thought I could get into. And so I auto-rotated over to it, but I wasn't going to make it, so I had to nurse the collective to try and get over there. And I got to the point where I was about 40 feet above the ground, went into the flare, and it just fell.
Yes.
We fell right into the Mustang, bent the gear up in a big U, cut off the tail boom, popped out of the windshield, well walked away. The helicopter was destroyed. Found out later that it was a problem with the governor, the high pressure line leaked.
Your PC line.
Flight idle.
Yep. Yep. No, beautiful. Here's the key thing I want you guys to think about here. In every instance, were they at 1,000 foot in the circuit with an instructor beside them going 3, 2, 1 engine failure to do a nice practiced auto rotation? The answer is no, is it? Yet how do we teach auto rotations? Auto rotations are taught normally in a circuit about 1,000 feet with an instructor beside you going 3, 2, 1 practice, and away you go. And in real life, the problem that causes you to enter auto rotation and put the thing on the ground happens who knows where. 150 feet taken off with a power line, about 600 feet with 3 guys in the back down to idle. 11,000 feet, I reckon it's a Darwin Award going there, 11,000 feet and a Hughes 300, which when you enter autorotation at 300, it's notorious for a rich cut and just dying on you. The point is, what we're going to teach here is something to do with muscle memory. We want you to learn a process, and that process should happen no matter what height, and you go through the same thing. You've got to have some things happening automatically for you, because without that, you're not going to have the time to cognitively think it all through. You can't weigh up your options and go pros and cons. It's just not going to happen. So we're going to run through the autorotation process. So the first thing we have to do when we have a problem is to enter autorotation. Now I want you guys to tell me, when something goes wrong, let's just say it's the engine failing at this point in time, and it all goes quiet, or noisy, what's the first thing you do? Anybody? Bueller? Anybody? Okay, lower the collective. Push my nose forward. Darwin, man. And I'll explain why. So, collective, forward cyclic, anybody else? Aft cyclic, anybody else? Look for a spot. Anybody else? Stop the yaw. Yep. So we've got a lot of different things, yeah? So what I want you to do is shut your eyes. Close your eyes. Keep them tight. Don't look at me. That way I can get your passwords off your computers and all that sort of thing. So shut your eyes. I want you to stand up. Keep your eyes shut. Now I want you all to walk out the door with your eyes shut. Go get me a cup of coffee, 1 sugar, please. Okay, so you can all sit down. The point I'm trying to make is you have to see things. So, standing up is lowering the collective. That should instinctively be the first thing you do, is start getting that collective coming down. Now, even though I've got it in stages here, and we go lower that collective and then the next thing, things are happening pretty quick, and this is happening almost simultaneously, but you've got to get an order going. So you start lowering that collective first. Why would we lower the collective first? We've got to preserve rotor RPM. If you've got no rotor RPM, you've got nothing. Right? You've got nothing. You need that RPM to have something. That's your lift. So what's the second thing you do? And I got you to stand up, which you did lowering the collective, and you couldn't do anything else after that until you actually opened your eyes to see where you were going, right? If I said, go get me the cup of coffee, you all just laughed at me. No one was going to move. You couldn't do a thing until you actually opened your eyes and said, the door's there, I've got to walk down here. So the second thing you do, you see it's trying to make, there you go, is look outside. We're pilots, right? We're visual. We do things with our eyes so much. We gain other information through our ears and our proprioceptive system, the seat of our pants, all those sorts of things. But primarily, you react based on what you see. So, if you're lowering the collective and you're now looking inside at I must have something wrong, what's happening to your attitude? What's happening? You no idea. And you said the nose goes down. And you said push the cyclic forward. But if you did nothing with the cyclic, but you just lowered the collective, what's the nose going to do automatically? Why does it go down? Why does it pitch forward so violently? Sorry? You're looking down? Okay, well I could do it. It would still pitch down with my eyes shut. It would still pitch down in the cloud. It would still pitch down at night when I can't see the horizon. Okay. Okay, so now you've got to know some aerodynamics, right? So when you're flying along, let's say you're in the cruise with your collective at the cruise power setting, and you're flying along at 50, 80, 100, 140 knots. As you pass through translational lift, from zero to become a hero, up to pass through translational lift, what does the disc want to do through translational lift? What does it want to do? Yeah, it wants to flat back, doesn't it? The nose pitches up, but the disc wants to flat back because of the oncoming wind. How do you correct for that? You push the cyclic forward. You change the pitch on the blades, you drive the disc down then, don't you? Aerodynamically. As you go faster, what do you got to do? You've got to push the cyclic forward a bit more. As you go faster, what do you got to do? You push the cyclic forward a bit more. Now, with the dissymmetry of lift and everything on that disc, we've got collective pitch, we've got cyclic countering flat back, Now we lower the collective and get rid of all that pitch. What happens to the amount of flatback that the disc is going to experience when you got rid of all the pitch? It reduces. But what happens to the cyclic feathering that you've still got in play? It just drives the cyclic drives the disc forward. So the disc goes forward because you've got the cyclic all the way forward for the speed. So the forward cyclic's countering the flatback, but you take away a lot of that flatback when you lower the collective. So bang, the nose just wants to drop. It's an aerodynamic thing. Some people tried to tell me it's because the wind hitting the tail, in your autorotation, that's pushing the nose up. But at the point of autorotation, you're not descending yet. There is no rate of descent to push the tail up yet. So it's something else that's making the nose drop, and it's all that cyclic feathering you've got. So you have to lower the collective. You've got to look to the horizon with your eyes. And now I'm not going to say forward or back cyclic or anything. I'm going to say set an attitude. Now, why would I say set an attitude and not just pull the cyclic back? What if I'm on a 100-foot long line doing power lines and I'm at the hover? Then yeah, I'd push the cyclic forward to try and get some speed. Okay, so the scenario is going to vary based on your situation. Remember, we're not in the circuit at 1,000 feet with the instructor going 3, 2, 1 engine failure at 80 or 90 knots. We are probably on takeoff or on an approach or doing a job or whatever we have to be. Lowering the collective, look outside, and we're going to set an attitude to keep myself level, and I'll set about what looks like the hover picture to me. That will give me an attitude of about 60 knots. I'm going to do that with cyclic. I've got to keep straight with pedals. So if we're in training in a nice standard autorotation, sure, 3, 2, 1 practice, lower collective, look outside, set the attitude, which will be a little bit of aft cyclic. If I'm at 30 or 40 knots on takeoff, and I'm about 150 feet, engine failure, lower collective, look outside, just hold the attitude I got and start a flare. Happens real quick. If I've got a long line happening and I'm 150 feet or 200 feet or whatever, and I'm looking outside and I have engine failure, I'll be lowering the collective, I'll probably be dropping the nose a little bit to try and get some speed up, and I'll button the load and look for a hole. If I have time and height, yes, I'm going to turn into wind, I'm going to pick a spot if I can, all of those things. And then on the way down, I need to do some descent checks. Now, I'll put a caveat with these descent checks. How many descent checks did you do on your way down? 0. Guarantee it. What about anyone else? One?
I was up so high, I had to keep dampening my RPM.
Yep.
That's about my
Had to keep controlling it. No problems. Anybody else that had a real one? No, sorry, sir. Yeah, no, we'll get to the descent checks. You want to check your RPM. Is the engine going or is it off? You need to do some things. But then the point is, A, do you have time to do it? And B, what are you going to check anyway? Okay, so descent checks. Normally, if I'm below 1,000 feet, really, I'd forgive you if you didn't do any. You just went on your muscle memory and made things happen. But above that, you can do a few things. So what are descent checks? Oops. First of all, once you've got the helicopter set up in an auto, you want to look inside and see if the engine is actually going or not. Sometimes that thing that made you enter auto rotation, made your heart beat, wasn't an engine failing. It was a door popping open and flapping away and making your heart beat. It was a bird banging into you. It was a hydraulic belt coming off. It was something else. So you may actually have some power. So look inside and see if the engine is idling or not. I think the guy at the back had probably a PC line come off and it went straight to idle. So the engine hadn't failed, but it wasn't giving enough power to hold RPM. But it would help a little bit at the bottom of preserving a bit of RPM at the idle. Not a lot, but it'll give you something. You've got some residual power going there. So see if your engine's idling. So in a turbine, that'll be looking at your N1 or your N2. In a piston, you just want to look at your engine RPM. Where is it? Maybe use that throttle. See if you can get it to change. So what's it doing? Have a look at your rotor RPM. Now, some people say to me, gee, checking my rotor RPM's a long way down. Shouldn't I be checking it up here? Well, the answer is not really, because things are happening so fast. So often it takes about 1.5 seconds for you to actually go, shit, and do something. That 1.5 seconds brings your RPM from 100% probably out the bottom of the green. So your RPM's low. You've probably got some horns going off and all the rest of it. So that pushing that collective down is the only thing you can do to actually start having that RPM come up. Now, sure, if I'm at high speed, say above 60 knots, setting that attitude and using aft cyclic is also going to bring that RPM up. That's also going to help. But your RPM is probably not going to go screaming out the top until you start getting a rated descent happening. And it takes about 200 or 300 feet of falling to actually get a rated descent happening. So to check your RPM early is not going to help you. If the collective's down, the collective's down. It's the best you can do right now. So we can check it here, because now you would have fallen a few hundred feet and you would have a rate of descent establishing, and therefore the rotor RPM starting to spool up again on you. And you may have to control it based on how heavy you are and how high you are. Now I'll check balance. All right, so that happened pretty late in the whole thing. I'll check my balance. It's not unusual for you to be out of balance in an auto. Your feet seem to respond slowly. The rest is all happening around you. And then I'll check speed. Why did I check balance before speed? If you're out of balance, your pitot tube's not going to be reading correctly, is it? So you might only have 30 knots airspeed on the airspeed indicator, but that's probably because you're out of balance. So if you try to correct the speed first before you correct balance, you could be diving at the ground. And then when you get in balance, gee, now I'm actually doing 80 knots. I didn't want that. So check your balance, get yourself in balance, then your airspeed will read correctly and you can check it. Now, see, these are in different colour. Now, if you've got time, you'll get a Mayday call out, do some trouble checks, like a restart and things like that, and do a passenger brief. Don't focus on these a lot, because if I'm below 1,000 feet, I'll be lucky if I can get that done and maybe a Mayday call. Lucky to do that. Now, our training, based on the fixed wing world, means you've got a lot of time to do things, and they teach you all the things. Helicopter world, we sort of live around 1,500 feet, really, don't we? If you're above 1,500 feet, sure, I've got time to do more. But if you're not above 1,500 feet, you don't have time to do all this theory textbook stuff of trouble checks, mags on, fuel cock on, carburetor heat on, check this, check that, check everything else. Passenger brief, passenger, we're obviously crashing. Can you please make sure your seatbelt's done up? This is the brace position. You should have done all that before you left. But if I'm starting all this at 11,500 feet, I might have some time to do some of these things. So, descent checks. Lower collective, look outside, set the attitude, keep straight. Turn into wind, pick a spot. Got that done, take a breath. Engine's idling or not. Rotor's in the green, fix it if it's not. In balance, in the speed. I've got the speed that I want for the attitude I've set for what I want to do. I want to stretch it further, I'll go a bit faster. I don't need to go so far, I'll go a little bit slower. Your books all say, or your flight manual all gives an auto rotation speed for a helicopter, right? And you've got to be on those numbers. If you're not on that number, you're going to die. Well, I can tell you pretty well every helicopter I've ever flown, if I'm somewhere between 40 to 45 knots and 75 knots, I'm a happy camper. Fast is not always better. A lot of times slow is better. What's most important is controlling your rate of descent. So, based on your experience, you set the speed for what you need for where you've got to go. Try not to go below 40 knots if you can help it, because you just want something at the bottom to give you a little bit of leeway. Try not to be too fast, because that's just going to increase your rate of descent and make your workload harder down the bottom. As I said, about 45 to 75 knots, if you're in that range, you're doing okay. Decision height, this is more for instructors, simply because if you're in a real situation, there is only one decision, isn't it? It's a full touchdown auto. But if you're in an instructing scenario, you might have the option to say, oh, let's go around. Let's make a power termination to the hover. Let's make this a full touchdown. You've got to make those decisions early, not at the end of a flare when, oh, this is not working out. You make it early. Sorry. Oh. Come on. Go around. Power termination. Full touchdown. And then we've got to do a flare. Now this is the real interesting one. The Robinson 22 has been our most prolific training helicopter for the last 20 to 25 years. It has a really low inertia rotor system. And because it's an American helicopter, you guys over here tend to do your auto rotations to the bitumen, where you can run it on the ground at 20 or 30 knots for about 40 or 50 feet and skid it on as long as you like. The numbers you get given in the book are all based on how they build the dead man's curve or the height velocity curve, and that's built based on rules given by the FAA. And we have to abide by that in Australia as well, because we get the same flight manual and the same test data is given. When they build that height velocity curve, they have rules. And the rules simply state you have to enter auto rotation here at this weight, wait this amount of time before you lower the collective, and as long as you haven't replaced a major component in that helicopter at the end of the auto, we've demonstrated you can do a successful auto to the ground. So the best way is to run it on this bitumen at 20 or 30 knots, because you can just hold it close to the ground, do a harsh flare really low, and then run it all on the ground. So that ends up being the technique that people have been learning for the last 25 or 30 years, where you end up keeping a higher speed, leaving your flare till it's really late, doing a really hard flare close to the ground with your tail close to the ground, but you've got to level the skids while you're still going 25, 30 knots, and then along the ground. I doubt if that would have worked for any of you guys that had a real auto rotation. You'd really be wanting to 0-0 it if you could. 0-0 meaning no forward speed, no rate of descent in the ideal world. Okay? So, the techniques people have been using have been watered down, in my opinion, over the years. If we go back 25 years where most of the pilots came out of the military and we had higher inertia rotor systems, we learnt different techniques. Constant attitude autos, initial pitch pulls, level of skids, 0-0s, and all these things that we learnt because we had a different type of helicopter to learn in. I'm telling you that those older techniques work in the low inertia machines as well, and they should be the techniques that you use out there in everyday life, and you'll get a much better result. And we'll show you some pictures of stuff. So, the flare. You guys are all pilots. Can you tell me what the flare does? I've got to reduce speed. What else does it do? Winds up the rotor system. That's a flare effect as opposed to what the flare does. And I'll explain the difference in a minute, but you weren't wrong. It's just a different thing. So reduces speed and reduces rate of descent. So that is the two things a flare is designed to do. You guys have done quick stops, haven't you? What does the quick stop do? Same thing. So all you're doing at the bottom of an auto rotation is a quick stop. It's not rocket science, except for terminating at the hover. You're going to terminate on the ground. So you're going to reduce your speed and reduce your rate of descent. No big deal. But in the process, I'll just get this. Reduces speed, reduces rate of descent. In the process of you doing this, come on, work. Yeah, if you could click, Bev. I think my batteries are going flat. We end up with what we call 3 flare effects. These are the consequences of you doing that manoeuvre. Now, to explain that, you'll drive a car, right? You'll drive a car. So when you come up to a traffic light and it turns orange, what do you do? Yeah, you guys have been in Saudi too long. All right, it's turning red. Turning red. What do you do if it's turning red? Stay on the gas even more. Yeah, okay, I get it. All right, so what should you do? Your foot comes off the accelerator and it goes onto the brake. Now, when you put your foot on the brake, what does the car do? It slows down, right? It slows down. That's like the flare, reducing speed. But other things are happening to that car, isn't it? The calipers are coming onto the disc. You're generating a whole bunch of heat. So an effect of braking can be the generation of heat. You feel inertia through the seatbelt because you're moving forward and the car's slowing down, so you feel the pressure of the seatbelt against you. That would be a braking effect. So the helicopter, when it flares, experiences things because of the maneuver you've just done. Now, can you tell me one thing that you might experience because of the maneuver?
Because of autorotation,
Because of the flare.
transfer the,
Well, you said it before. You said it before.
you wind up the rotor.
Okay, so you get an increase in rotor RPM. Cool. Anything else? Anything else? Bueller? Nothing? Oh, no, that's not a flare effect. The deceleration, what the flare does. Good. So let's have a look at it. Let's take a closer look at the theory behind this, because if you understand this, you'll understand what's happening to your helicopter. And then once you understand what's happening to your helicopter, you can milk it. No, not your pedals. We'll get there. So let's take a closer look. So when we're flying along, straight and level, the wind is on the nose, isn't it? Yes, we might have a crosswind or something like that, but you're moving forward 100 knots. The rotor disc in general is feeling the wind on the nose. If you're Auntie Nellie and you've bolted Auntie Nellie to the rotor blade and she stood there with her hair untied, it would be blowing away because of the wind, right? You got that? But when we enter autorotation, we start a descent, we change the direction that airflow is going to be coming through the rotor disc. Yes, we will still have some airflow on the nose, but now we also have a lot of air coming from underneath us because we're falling. Does that make sense? Yeah, that makes sense. So, let's have a look at the aerodynamics on the rotor blade right there at this point in time. The pitch on the rotor blade is going to be, what, high or low? Hopefully by this time it's low. You've lowered the collective, right? So the pitch should be low. Our plane of rotation, so if you remember back when you did your theory, you did your vector diagrams. You know, your plane of rotation, your rate of descent airflow and your relative airflow. You remember all those diagrams? Unfortunately, in theory books, when we generally write them, we have to print it. And it's much easier to draw straight lines, and so it's not orientated how it really is in the real aircraft. We all make it representative. So I'm going to try and draw the vectors as they are on the blade. So if that is our plane of rotation, which is the rotor blade, it's not going to come straight out. It's actually going to be parallel with the rotor blade. That's our plane in which the rotor blades are rotating. What determines the length of that line? Speed of what? Of the rotor. My rotor RPM. If I have a low rotor RPM, we could draw that as a short line. If I had a really high RPM, I could draw it as a long line. So let's assume this line represents the rotor in the green, where it should be. You'll have to push it, Bev. Yeah, click. Click. Okay, now, because we have a rate of descent airflow, the air is coming up from underneath the disc, it's going to be represented by this vector. The length of this vector is going to be determined by the rate of descent. Let's say 1,800 feet per minute. If I join these two together, click, we end up with a relative airflow, which is the airflow that the blade thinks or is actually experiencing, which is a combination of the two, isn't it? Like if I'm walking this way and the wind's blowing this way, I'll probably feel a breeze on a bit of an angle. So this is, the relative airflow represents the actual airflow that the blade experiences, the sum of all the airflows. Now, the angle of attack, because we've got to get some lift out of this, is the angle between what? Anyone know? The chord line and the relative airflow. Click away. So there we go. So we got an angle, we actually got a positive angle of attack. Not a big one, not a small one, we've got an angle of attack. We've got some lift being produced. Click away. That lift ultimately gives us rotor thrust, because all the lift throughout the length of the blade is summarised into a total rotor thrust. So in aeroplanes they talk about lift on a wing, and in a helicopter we end up talking about total rotor thrust, which is the sum of all the lift being produced along the length of each blade acting through the mast. So we just sum it all up and say that's our total rotor thrust. And our total rotor thrust always acts at right angles or perpendicular to the plane of rotation. So if the disc is tilted forward, the rotor thrust is pointing in that direction. Disc is pointed back, that direction. Click away, Bev. So we can then divide that total rotor thrust, click away, into two components. The vertical component, which actually opposes our weight and is controlling our rate of descent, because we're not free falling, we're not accelerating towards the ground. Once we're in an autorotation, we will come down at a set rate. And we have a horizontal component, which is pulling the helicopter forward. In this case, let's say it's pulling us forward at 60 knots. That's why it does it. No big deal. So this picture here and these graphics here represent a helicopter in a stable autorotation at 60 knots. Click away. Now, we flare the helicopter. So let's look at the aerodynamics again there. When we flare the helicopter, even though we haven't changed our pitch at all, we've changed the orientation of the plane of rotation. And that orientation is changed relative to the wind, because it's still falling down the same line. So, but instead of the disc being like this, it's now like that, falling in the same line. So our rate of descent airflow at the moment of the flare is still the same amount, but you can see the angle is completely changed. Let's say, exaggerate, say it's gone to about 90 degrees. If it's gone to 90 degrees, I've actually increased my angle of attack. Instantly, the flare has increased my angle of attack. If I increase my angle of attack, what have I done? Increased lift or decreased lift? Increased it. So therefore, what's happened to my total rotor thrust? I've increased it, yeah? My total rotor thrust has gone up. So now I've actually got more thrust opposed to weight. So what's that going to do to my rate of descent? Decrease it. We go, hallelujah, aerodynamics works. Just by doing the flare, I've actually decreased my rate of descent. Beautiful. Total rotor thrust, is it facing forward now or backwards? Click away, Bev. So if it's facing backwards, I've got this big horizontal component going, hey horse, slow down. It's reduced my speed. So, 3 flare effects. I get an increase in total rotor thrust. I get thrust reversal, where my thrust has gone from pulling me forward at 60 knots to now trying to stop me at about 90 knots backwards, in effect. Click. And now, because I've increased my lift on my rotor blades, what does a rotor blade or an aerofoil want to do when you increase lift on it? No, if I increase lift on an aerofoil, does the aerofoil want to go up or does the aerofoil want to go down? It wants to go up. And so in a helicopter, the roots of the blades are bolted to the mast, but the blades want to do this. They want to go up, don't they? Because I'm increasing lift. So the blade's cone, all right, got Coriolis effect. So as the blades cone and they get closer and closer to the centre, what happens to the RPM? Goes up. So now I've got an increase in rotor RPM. Is that good or bad at the bottom of an auto? Yeah. I'm getting some more energy put into my rotor system that I can use, which is what I want. One of the big problems we have, very low inertia rotor system, it goes, and we're doing this with the collective, pumping away. High inertia rotor systems, you go, oh yeah, it's gone up a little bit, and it just stays rock solid. So high inertia rotor systems are awesome and easy to do autos with. Low inertia rotor systems, you have to work a bit harder, have it set up a bit better, and it all happens a little bit faster. So, we flare the helicopter by doing a quick stop. Bit of aft cyclic. Got to keep straight. I'm going to reduce my speed, reduce my rate of descent. The effect of me doing that means rotor thrust is going to increase. Oh, that's what's actually reducing my rate of descent. The rotor thrust is facing backwards. That's what's actually slowing me down. The overall effect is my rotor RPM increases. Oh, I'm getting some energy stored into that rotor system I can use. Click away. So, as we pass through approximately 75 through to 100 feet. Some of you will think that flare is bloody high. I'll do the same flare height in a 22. I don't do big split arse flares close to the ground. I actually do a small, gentle, progressive flare. Because what am I trying to do? I'm trying to reduce my rate of descent. I'm trying to reduce my forward speed so that I get to 10 feet above the ground, and then I can use whatever energy I've got to cushion myself on. That's what I'm trying to do. So, I have these words I say in my head as I do the flare. The first one I say is flare. Flare. I'll make it happen. Now, I'll hold that flare. Click, Bev. Let's just go back to the hold. Why would I hold the flare, and how long do I hold it for? It's a very good question. That's why I asked it of myself. So, if you look at this as a helicopter, and this is your helipad here, and I'm in an autorotation and I'm wanting to do a flare, and I do a small flare, but now my touchdown point is going underneath me. What should I actually do? Well, what can I do? I can harshen the flare up a bit. I can develop that flare a bit more until my sight picture goes, yep, no, I'm going to make it now. And once I get that picture that that's where my flare is going to take me, I just hold that. What if I'm falling short? I've done a bit of falling short, take a bit of flare off, and it'll actually creep forward a bit more. So you can develop that flare. I prefer to be closer to objects rather than further away, so I can actually develop the flare rather than be far away and go, oh, now I've got to try and milk it to get there. Okay? So the hold bit is really to develop it, get it to the right position. Once you get the right sight picture, just hold it. Hold it, hold it, until you get 10 feet above the ground. You can pretty well survive anything from 10 feet, I'd argue. So now the rest is you're going to get lucky. Right? Yeah, we're going to use some good techniques and hopefully it's all going to work out for you. But even if it was all custard, you'd probably survive. But geez, what are you going to be landing on? Probably not a runway with an instructor beside you, probably in some tall trees. So now you need a little bit of luck on your side of what you're going to touch down on. And if it's a nice big open field, great, you've got a lot of luck going your way today. Or maybe some good planning and you've been able to think ahead if there was an event happening. So at about 10 feet, I then do an initial pitch pull. Has anyone heard about an initial pitch pull before? Well, military guys would have. Initial pitch pull. How about in the Robinson world? Anyone ever heard of an initial pitch pull? Okay, all it means is that 10 feet, because the RPM's increasing, I can now pop the collective up about that much, physically that much. And it increases pitch on the blades. If I increase pitch on the blades, what do I do to my rotor thrust? Increase it instantly. So I've actually put on a big air brake. So it goes flare, initial. And it pretty well stops at 10 feet. And that's it. Now all I've got to do is level those skids and use whatever I've got left just to cushion the thing on. An engine failure at the hover. Let it pedal, settle, pull. Click, Bev. Oh, where did we go? Okay, that's all right. So we've covered those aerodynamics, Click away. Keep clicking. Okay, so here we go. Right in here, we've done this rate of descent bit. We've got our thrust reversal, increase in total rate of thrust. We're at the initial pitch pull. So at that point, our rate of descent airflow should be very small, shouldn't it? That's the whole point of the flare, is to reduce it all. This is the point where they talk about your flare effects dying out. When your rate of descent dies out, there's nothing else driving the rotor system except for inertia. So that's where it all starts feeling like, oh, there's not a lot left here except the inertia. But that's the point. Click again, Bev. And again. Keep going. Keep going. I wanted to show it where, just go back. Okay, so, it was there, I just didn't notice it. So, see here with this dotted line? This is where my rotor RPM has increased. There. So this is all this extra inertia that I can now use by pulling the collective. So click away. So once I do that initial pitch pull, level the skids, let it fall that 5 feet, pull the cushion on, click away. Yeah, keep clicking. Okay, here we go. So we've leveled the skids. Keep going. I'm pulling this collective up. Now, of course, as I pull it, the RPM comes back as well. Now, one of the problems we have with muscle memory is you tend to know where 100% torque is, or you tend to know where your, what is it in the Robinson, 24, 25 inches of manifold pressure is. You tend to know where it is. So people stop pulling at about that point, because for their whole career they've been slapped on the knuckles if they pull anywhere past that point. In auto rotation, it doesn't matter. You can pull that lever under your armpit if you need to. You pull enough to cushion it on. Yeah, the RPM's going to come down short. Most helicopters, when you get down to about 70% RPM, that's where she just stops producing lift for you and she'll just drop out of the sky. Prior to that, you've got something to play with. Outside of that, then you're just accelerating again towards the ground. Okay, and you pull the cushion on, click away. So flare, develop, hold, initial, level, let it sink, click, then pulled cushion on. That's that last little bit, the cushion on, click. Keep straight with your feet, very important if there is any forward movement, because I have no problems with there being some forward movement. No, it can't be perfect, but you've got to keep straight. Click. Lock that cyclic slightly forward in neutral. You don't want to be doing this on the ground. Any aft cyclic, you're going to chop the tail off. Right? Especially if you're moving forward, the tail will come up, you pull the cyclic back, disc comes down, you lost the back end of the tail. Very common. Once you've stopped, you count to 2. Anyone ride motorcycles here? Okay, ever fallen off? Or okay, have you ever seen the high speed guys racing away and they go skidding across the ground? And sometimes they actually stand up and then they're tripping over themselves. Because they've been going so fast, when they get slow, they actually think they've stopped, but they haven't stopped. And they stand up and trip over themselves. Same thing with you guys. You're in a helicopter, it's going quite quick. All this rates of descent, everything's quick. So when you think you've stopped on the ground, don't dump the collective down yet. Hold it up there for a couple of seconds. Count to 2. And then lower it. And that'll prevent any of this nose down and then aft cyclic bit. You just hold the collective up there for a bit. No big deal.
I don't think that would work if you ran that, if you happen to have a faster run on, holding that collective up would not be a wise thing. Because we actually had one where the tail chopped off because they had a little bit of porpoising and the guys followed, and of course you get out of sync, you're pushing when you should be pulled, and holding the collective up, you're killing that rotor real quick, and that spinning top that did have some stability now has 0.
Yep.
So you don't need to dump the collective down, I agree, but you do need to progressively lower that collective.
Yeah, don't disagree with you at all. The only thing I'd say to that is I'd stay away from run-ons full stop. Just don't like them because, and you don't get a choice. I agree. I absolutely agree. That's why there's more than one way to skin a cat, and there's never perfect. And it's a great comment. Thank you very much. Click away, Bev. All right. So then once you do that, you can then get out, kiss the ground, say, "Thank you very much." Kiss the ground. Mate, just kiss the ground. Be grateful. Be grateful. Click away. Okay, so let's have a look at it. Engine failure, enter auto rotation, low collective, look outside, set the attitude, keep straight. Turn into wind, pick a spot to land. If you have time, do some descent checks. N1, NR, balance, speed. Oh, I'll get a mayday call out because I can. Trouble checks, no, not going to bother. Passenger brief, I've already told you on the ground, not going to bother. Move on. Passing through about 500 feet, make a decision. If it's a real one, there is no decision, it's done. You're going to the ground, just going to try and make sure you're going to try and manoeuvre to your spot. Passing through about 100 feet, start a flare. Develop that flare. Once you've got it right to get close to the spot you want to go to, you hold it, hold it, hold it till you're about 10 feet. That's the point where people normally stuff up. They don't hold the collective. Sorry, they don't hold the flare, and they start gently raising the collective because the ground's rushing up. And they just start bleeding all their RPM, so there's nothing left at the bottom. You've got to keep that collective down there. And hold, hold, hold. Yeah, sure, the ground's coming up at you, but you've got all this RPM that you can use to stop it. But if you bleed it, there's nothing left. And there's no initial pitch pull. So hold and leave that collective where it is. 10 feet, initial pitch pull, takes a bite of the air, the helicopter, you actually feel it stop. Level the skids, let it fall, pull the cushion on, control your run on depending on your circumstance, like the gentleman said. Next one. Okay, got any questions on that? On the full touchdown auto? We've got to... no, that's all right, we'll do this one, and then we'll show some videos. So, once you've learnt the basic technique and got the basic muscle memory going of lower collective, look outside, set the attitude, keep straight. You need to be able to repeat that over and over again, so it just comes automatically. You then have to manoeuvre based on your circumstances. Lots of different ways to manoeuvre. 360s, 180s, S-turns, constant attitude autos. My preference, I don't like mucking around with high speed and 360-degree turns. The reason I don't like 360-degree turns is because you turn your back on where you're going and you can't see it. If it's in front of me, I'll just keep it in front of me. There's nothing to stop you coming down vertically. You don't need speed for an autorotation, you need rate of descent for an autorotation. So you could actually bring your helicopter back to 0 speed. You can even go backwards if you want. As long as you've got that rate of descent, the blades are all going. The disadvantage of that is it's very hard to flare and get it all the timing right down the bottom with no speed. So passing through 500 feet, you really need to have got yourself sorted so you can build that speed up. No later than 500 feet, you want to be getting some positive speed on the clock. But don't be afraid if your speed gets low and you're high. You're not going to die as long as your collective's down. Helicopter doesn't stop flying. The blades don't stop turning. So you had a question? No? Okay. So you then have to learn how to manoeuvre it. And these are all things you'll learn at your school. No, not liking me. That's it. Okay, we just got a couple of videos we'll run through, you show them the videos, and then after that we'll jump in and talk about forced landings and crash dynamics, and you can see what you can actually get away with. So which one you want first, Bev? We've got just a stock standard straight ahead auto. Okay, standard auto. So this would be about 1,000 feet, straight in, very simple. Probably hear the RPM wind down at some point. There you go. Lower collective, look outside, set the attitude, keep straight. I'm already into wind, I already know where the spot is, nothing else to do. It's a very boring manoeuvre. It's very benign. If you're in a Robinson by about this stage, you would have had to pull the collective up by about that much to control the RPM from overspeeding because it's a low inertia rotor system. High inertia rotor systems just don't do anything. Leave the collective down and it just sits there as long as it's rigged right. Passing through 100 feet, you'll flare, develop it, good hold, 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 hold. Do an initial, level the skids with the ground, let it fall, gently pull the cushion on, lock that cycle in place so the disc doesn't flop around. Did I film it or done it? No, that was one shot. There you go, same deal. Actually just go back because you can actually see where the initial kicks in there and you see the helicopter come down and it sort of just does a little stop. That's where the initial came in. So pass through 100 feet, flare, going quite high. Not a big flare, is it? Develop, hold, initial. Oh, she stops. Now I can just push it on with the go. Okay. Not a lot of run on, which is ideal. If you can stay away from run on. This is from the inside. The best thing to look at probably, you might be able to see, watch the initial down the bottom. See what I do with my hand at the bottom. And you see it's a sharp little initial pitch pull.
Anyone in a balance of speed?
Yeah, I mean, very boring manoeuvre. Especially in the Jet Ranger. Got all day. One thing instructors struggle with is they want to talk all the way down. Stick to keywords and then shut up. Keywords, shut up. For some reason I think we lose the audio just at the bottom. So probably about now be a bit of a flare. Develop, hold, watch that arm. Initial, there you go. Level the skids, let it fall, pull the cushion on. The collective's not coming up under my armpit, is it? It's not a lot of work there. If you get the technique right, it just all happens beautifully. Easy to say in a controlled environment, I know. Okay, really easy to say. Right, what else we got, Bev? All right, what's this one? Oh, going backwards. So we come up to a spot, it's underneath and we've got a bit of wind, so I just pull it up, come backwards, let it fall, and then go put it on the pad. Rate of descent is about the same. Speed, no speed. With 60 knots, about 800 feet per minute, no speed, maybe gets to 2,000. So we're coming down vertically. About 500 feet, drop the nose forward, build up some speed again. Reach my 100 feet, I'll do a flare, develop, hold, initial, level the skids, and on the ground. Good, no big deal. Believe it or not, an R44 auto's pretty well the same as a jet box. Now that's it from the outside, so here we're coming backwards. I think when you see the ground, so you're flying the disc, not the fuselage. We'll drop the nose over soon, build up a bit of speed, there you go. I'll get some positive speed going to make the spot. Clear it, initial, level, on the ground. Yeah. Oh, I don't look at the airspeed indicator. I'm too busy looking outside. I would be between 40 and 60. I'm guessing about 45 knots. Right.
This is a backwards auto.
Right, it's the same auto but from inside.
Entering over the
Actually,
top
you might
of
be able
the
to see the speed in here.
pad. Down vertically onto it.
See, I'm doing about 100 knots
Now,
there
engine
now.
failure, lower collective. Bring the nose
Speed,
up.
80, 60.
We actually balloon up a little bit. We'll start going backwards and the wind will blow us backwards.
Down to zero now.
Indicator's reading 0.
Going backwards.
We keep straight with our feet. Looking for our helipad. Come inside at our feet.
Not
We know
really
where we're
busy
going.
either, are we, in the cockpit?
There's our 1, 2.
20 knots. 40. Not even 40.
There.
Not even 40.
Initial. Level. On the ground. Whiskey Charlie Fox.
Not even 40. Right? It's about preserving the RPM, controlling that rate of descent, having a good result to put it on the ground. So being paranoid about speed, that's come from the low inertia world and the training environment. I'm not saying do whatever speed you like. I'm saying you don't have to be that rigid. You'll crash a helicopter trying to get to 60 knots when 40 would have been fine. What's this one? S-turns, might just do some S-turns to come down. That looks like, yeah, 180 maybe? I don't know. Yeah, 180. Oh, 360, 360. So, kind of kept my speed there, just did a nice turn. I think next time we're going to do the filming, we're going to get a drone. Much better results from a drone than from another helicopter. Sorry? This is probably a 360 again, is it? Yeah, there you go. So 360, you do the same thing. Lower collective, look outside, set the attitude, keep straight, identify your spot. Okay, I'm going to do a turn. You come around, you want the turn done pretty quickly so you can actually see your pad. Once you can see your pad, then you can actually take the turn off or take the turn in, so you can coordinate it a little bit better. Watch that initial pitch pull when she just stops on you. Initial, and you're done. Touch wood, we haven't had an accident doing a touchdown auto, and the whole time we've been flying, we've wrecked about, well, we've damaged about 6 of instructors doing power terminations and stuffing it up and forgetting to turn the throttle on. Yeah.
What's driving your decision in terms of a 360 or a straight
Oh, here I'm just demoing it. It's all about being able to make the spot. It's in the syllabus you have to do a 360. I hate them. You have a high rate of descent, you lose sight of your pad, you've got to try and get your judgment going. If I had any choice, I'd just keep the pad in front of me and slow down. Okay, bit of speed, it's all there. Maybe keep some speed and do some S turns. I really do try and avoid 360s if I can. A lot of workload if you get it wrong, especially if you're heavy, and it's very easy to stuff up. You know, if there's 15, 20 knots of wind blowing, guarantee you the first few times the students do it, they go, yep, 360. Gone. And if you only got one shot at it, you know, you don't get to get your timing sorted with the day's conditions. You're much better just keeping it in sight, in my opinion. Okay, low level auto, so here we are, about 100 knots, about 25 feet. This one you could go up, you could keep going straight ahead, you can do all sorts of things. It's just a quick stop. And it flies forever. See the engine's back at idle there. When I get to my spot I might harshen it up a bit if I get a bit closer. Initial, level, a bit more of a run on there, gee, 5 feet, that's a bit rough, isn't it? Anyone got any questions on those? About 25 feet. Well, 25, 50 doesn't really matter. I mean, you're just doing a quick stop and you can play with it. If you had trees in front of you, you could just actually zoom, climb over the top and then come down. No problems, because you've got so much inertia in your system. You're good to go.
I have a question. You said you didn't like the 360s. What about the 180 if the wind
Oh,
is better to get a wind situation?
look, dead right. You've got to be turning into wind. If you know where the wind's coming from, you've got to be turning into it. Now, if it requires a 360 or a 180 or a 90, you do the turns to do it. What I'm saying, if I'm already into wind, and my spot's just down there, and I think if I did a normal auto, I'm going to overshoot it by miles, I'll do a 360, I'd go, why? Now I've turned my back on it, I don't know what the upper wind is, and by the time I get back, now I can't even make the spot that I had positively identified as being the spot. So I'd much rather go, slow it down, we'll do some S-turns maybe, keep it in sight, have a bit of a plan, and then take me to my spot. So I'm not saying don't do them, I'm saying be very careful when you choose to do them. Left, right-hand turns, no problems. You know, S-turns, no problems. 180s, you've got to get into wind. If it's behind you, you've got to turn into wind. So no problems whatsoever. Anybody else? Okay, we'll quickly jump into a little bit about crash dynamics. So you guys have got these, you can take them away. If there's spare ones around, feel free to put them in your pocket, go for your life. Use them at your school or spread them around. We've got a website, you can go and get it material.
What are your thoughts on some of the reports that have come out about doing the training on only do 4 or 5 of them? It seems like accidents happen after that. Heard some talk about that.
He just asked about some of the reports saying you should only do 4 or 5 autos when you're practicing them because we actually write more machines off practicing all those than we do. And we're dead right. We're actually practicing for something that is very rare, and we actually write off more helicopters practicing this manoeuvre than we do in real life. So the argument is, why bother practicing something that you're probably not going to have happen, but you're probably going to have happen in your training? I think if you do auto rotation training, you want to do it with a senior instructor that's on the ball with how to do autos. You don't necessarily want to do your auto rotation training with a guy that's just got his instructor's rating that's out there trying to practice himself. So what we do at our school, we allow our junior instructors to do power terms in the beginning stages, but then they all go out with a senior instructor to do the full touchdowns. And we do the full touchdowns later in the course, not early in the course, so that we know the student's got all the hand skills and knowledge rather than he's just been shadowed and been talked through it. So the touchdowns, we move right to the back end of our course when the guys have got the skill and can actually take it on board.
When you're doing them though, and you're going to go out and train, do you try to limit the amount you do in one training session?
No.
To you it doesn't really...
Most of it's up here. The more you do, are you at increased risk? Yeah, sure. But it's got to be done. So you know. Okay, forced and precautionary landings. We'll just quickly go through this. Flick away, Bev. We want to just have a quick look at what a forced landing procedure is, what a precautionary landing is, and I want to discuss quickly some crash dynamics, because how hard can you hit the ground and still survive? It's an interesting number to know. So what is a forced landing? What is a precautionary landing? Anyone want to throw it out at me? What's a forced landing? You don't have a choice. You're forced to do it, right? Something mechanical's gone wrong, whatever. You are forced to land. And so we typically consider a forced landing to be done without power. You're forced. If you have some power, bonus. And you'd argue, when would I have some power and it still be a forced landing? Well, what if you're on fire? If you're on fire, you get the damn thing on the ground. The textbooks say you should shut down the engine and turn your fuel off and do this. That's based on an airplane who's burning from 20,000 feet and he's in trouble. We're at 1,000 feet. Get the damn thing on the ground. And then run away from it and let it burn so I get the insurance. Okay? Okay? So forced landing, you're forced to do it. It's immediate, has to happen, it's done. If you can have some power, milk that thing for all it's worth to have some power. What is a precautionary landing then? All right, Matt Sakara has been talking about this, the old land and live thing, because it's the best thing for you to do given the circumstances. Things have changed. Something has happened that the safest place for you is on the ground. Deteriorating light. I've got bad weather. Oh shit, I've stuffed up. I'm running out of gas. I don't like that chip light. I don't like that caution light. I've got a passenger in the back that's being silly. I don't know. The safest place for you to be is on the ground. Get on the ground. Click away. So, forced landing, no choice. Precautionary landing, power on. And then we've got another option, of course, which is a diversion. Okay, I'm going to just change my plan and I'm going to go here instead of there. Click away. So, forced landing, I've broken it down a bit. 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. If you're 2,000 feet or above, you should have some time. Not a lot of time. Consider the helicopters come down at 2,000 feet a minute. You're at 2,000 feet, there's 60 seconds you've got to play with. Not a lot of time, really, is it? 1,000 feet, there's 30 seconds to play with. Not a lot of time. And it takes 1.5 seconds to realise that you got something wrong. It takes another 1.5 seconds to do something about it. Say another 5 seconds to get yourself established. Say another 5 seconds to do some descent on the ground. So, below 500 feet, just enter autorotation. If you get a mayday call out, good on you. If you can't, focus on the flying. 1,000 feet, should be able to enter auto, make a spot. You should be able to do a mayday call. Passenger brief, I do these before I leave. In a helicopter, if there's a problem, the passengers usually figure it out pretty quick. Here we go, we've got troubleshoots. Troubleshoots really just, piston is a classic for a troubleshoot. Carburetor heat on, mixture rich, mags on both, hit the starter button. In a turbine, it's a little bit more problematic. Probably not going to get any carburetor icing, or you could get some intake icing, but that's probably not going to be your main issue. Fuel, you're not going to get a start out of it. It's not going to burst into life like a piston normally, unless it's got an auto relight. So if it's forced, focus on the flying first. The rest will follow. Yep. Precautionary landing, treat it a bit like a confined area. So you want to do an orbit of the area, check it out, be happy with where you're landing, get it on the ground, if you have that option. Click, Bev. Okay, so the key takeaway is, if it's critical, the answer is yes, enter autorotation, get it on the ground, conduct the forced landing. If it's not critical, make a plan, right? Make a plan, and conduct a precautionary landing or divert. Okay, so the crash dynamics. This is an interesting little topic. We've got more information in our books where we expand on it, so I'll try and be brief with it here for this. So some of the numbers I've got from the US military. It's an old document they wrote years ago, and then I've sort of expanded and done a bit more research on it, but I thought it was a very good document. Bottom line, if you are doing an autorotation or a forced landing, I want you to put in your head that you are crashing a helicopter. Psychologically, get it in your head, you're crashing. Can't have denial when that's happening, all right? You're crashing. Understanding and accepting that is the very first part of actually being able to survive it. Click. It's not about saving the helicopter necessarily, it's about your survivability. That's your key takeaway. You should all be insured, you can replace a helicopter, can't replace you. So given your circumstance, you're looking after you rather than the helicopter. However, looking after the helicopter often is looking after you. So, you all drive a car, right? If I was in my motor car with suitably equipped seat belts and everything, and I drove it into that wall at 25 miles an hour, what safety equipment is built into that car to look after me? I've got a seat belt, right? It's going to stop me going out through the windscreen, hopefully. What else have I got? I've got airbags. We've got all this design features, so when I bang into something, this airbag goes off, looks after my face, side airbags, all the rest of it. What else? Crumple zones, all right? So the axles and the wheels fold up, the pedals fall down, the seats go down, we've got all these design features that when I'm moving horizontally, it's designed to protect me and give me survivability. I now hit that same wall in a helicopter. Let's call that wall a tree at 25 miles an hour, horizontally. Can you name for me any safety features we have in a helicopter that are designed to protect me? Seatbelt? Yeah, that holds me in the seat so the tree can collect me. Yeah, a seatbelt. Dashboard, there's no design feature in there. I've gone to accidents, I've pulled dead bodies out and the head's been through the console. It's not a safety feature that's going to help them. It kills people. What else have I got? Sorry? No, I'm talking horizontal. Pretty much we have no design features in a helicopter that are designed to protect you hitting the ground or hitting an object horizontally. None. They're not designed that way. Take the car. I lift it up to 25 feet on a crane and I drop it. What design features does a car have to protect you if that happens? Yeah, it's not designed for it though, is it? It's designed to take a few little bumps. You know? Suspension is designed to do a little bit of this. It's not designed to protect you being dropped from 25 feet vertically. Okay, can you name me some design features in a helicopter that's designed to protect me vertically? I've got my seats now. They are actually designed to protect me in a vertical impact. Skids. Skids are designed to do that, and these guys that had accidents, I bent the skids into a U shape above me, but we all got out okay. Seat displacement. How about the oleos? Like Black Hawk can handle a 16G vertical hit. 16G. So, when you are crashing something, are you better to hit it at 25 miles an hour straight ahead, trying to dissipate your energy between the ground and horizontal, or are you better off hitting it vertically? Well, in our case, in the helicopter, it's actually better to hit vertically, isn't it? Now, so that's what we do. So fixed wing, helicopter, this guy here, these things, 16G. All our design features are designed to protect us in a vertical hit, not a horizontal hit. So 0-0 landings are our preferred method of crashing onto the ground. 0-0, 0 vertical speed, and 0 forward horizontal speed at touchdown. That is our goal. Can we always achieve that? No, we can't, but we can actually hit the ground within some limits and still survive it quite nicely. But that's our goal. So 0-0 landings are the goal when terminating an autorotation, but depending on the circumstances, we may have some forward. We may have some combination here. I don't have a problem with it. It's often a compromise. The general rule is, the worse the touchdown terrain, the slower the run-on speed. I'm at an airport with a big runway. I'm happy to run on at 25 knots on that bitumen. And if it was a real one, I'd run it on the bitumen. I don't care if I scratch it all up and upset the people who own it. That's what I'd do. But if I'm now going into rocky mountain terrain or high trees, I don't want forward speed. I'd rather come down vertically. Click. So surfaces, smooth, flat, hard, run on speed, 10 to 20 knots, cool beans. Yeehaw. Trees, mountainous terrain, 0 speed, because when you hit something, it's going to hurt. Look at that tree there. Amazing how this Russian thing, look how solid that Russian thing is and how big that tree is. Anything else, it'll all be just completely mangled. It's amazing. Click. So G-loading. If we understand a bit about G-loading, you can understand how much you can tolerate and how much we can actually get away with. So G-loading is the force we feel when we change speed or direction, accelerate. The tolerance of the human body to G-force will depend on the magnitude, in other words, how much of it, the duration, how long do you experience that magnitude, the direction it acts. Right? We're human beings, we're designed to stand and feel G this way. We're not necessarily designed to handle it this way or negatively. The location of the application and the posture of the body at the time. All these things are important. Click. 2 known records that you guys might find interesting. This guy here bolted himself into a rocket sled, probably at the graveyard in Arizona or somewhere, and got 46 Gs at one time. This guy here, 179 Gs as he smacked into a concrete wall, going from 173 Ks and 66 centimetres to nothing. And he survived it. I think his eyeballs were hanging out of his face, but he survived it. In general, if it's vertical G as opposed to horizontal G, we can handle 5G. Right? The normal person can handle 5G. Prolonged, we can handle 9G if we're in a G suit, so fighter pilots. Negative, we can handle 3G. Instantaneous, which interestingly equates to 1,500 feet per minute rate of descent, is 40G. So if you did an autorotation with no flare and no nothing and we're coming down at around 1,500 to 1,800 feet per minute, it's going to hurt. You could possibly still survive it. So the reason we don't is because we stuff it up. And instead of having 1,500 feet per minute, we're pulling the collective too early, and now we start accelerating towards the ground again at a higher speed. So we end up hitting at 60G. It's deadly at 100, which is 3,000 feet per minute. That's vertical. Horizontal, we can actually handle 17, pushing the body backwards, 12, pushing the body forwards, 40 to 80G instantaneously, and 100G, we're gone. That's interesting numbers, aren't they? Click. So helicopter touchdown, 0-0 touchdown, hard flat surface, descent 25 feet per second, 1,500 feet per minute, no forward speed, we've got 20 to 40 Gs. We're damaged, we're hurt, possibly survivable. Forward speed, hard flat surface, 25 feet per minute, 5 to 10 knots forward, we're only going to be down less than 20 Gs vertical, horizontal is going to be 15 to 25, so we've spread the load. So you can see a bit of forward speed can have an advantage. Click away. Remember though, it's not the fall that's going to kill you, it's a sudden stop. So horizontally or vertically, you can handle those Gs, but you hit that tree, that's a sudden stop, you get up to 100 Gs very quick. Problems with forward speed is rolling. Often when you hit the ground, like you said, your RPM is going to be probably low, you can't control the disc, it starts wobbling around on you, it can roll over, and then you end up being killed by other things. The rotor blade comes in, takes you out. The rotor blade flies away, but the transmission now comes in on top of your head, takes you out. Other things end up getting you. Sorry, click Bev. So termination, it's important to modify the flare and touchdown technique based on what type of landing area is presented and available. Right, you're going to have to modify it. Harshen that flare up, take that flare off, accept a bit of run on, can't accept run on. I'm going to do the vertical. I'm going to sit it on my tail to fall down back behind the trees, those sorts of things. You're going to have to vary it based on the size of the area, the terrain, the obstacles, and the wind. I can't tell you what decision it is. You're going to have to mentally manage it and go through scenarios in your head so that when and if it does happen, muscle memory kicks in, you automatically do some things and you get a bit of survivability. Click. So terrain, are we going to be landing in trees and forested areas? Are we going to be landing in jungle, mountainous terrain, over the desert, over the water? Are we going to be on slopes? How are we going to modify our flare so that we actually get away with this? Click. Wires, agricultural, livestock, ploughed fields, roads and wires running along them, populated areas. You've got to think these scenarios through in your head. And you might decide it's not worth the risk. I'm going to go around that area and fly over a better area, so that if I do have something go wrong, I've got some better survivability. We used to do that a lot when you're flying over jungle areas, and these old helicopters that we used to have that weren't that reliable. I'm going to avoid the tiger country and I'm going to go around some open country. I'm not going to fly over that city. I'm going to go around that city. Or I'm going to follow the railway lines and go from footy field to footy field to footy field to footy field. Populated areas is an interesting one. If I showed you this picture, where would you land if you had an engine failure and you had to put it on the ground? Where would you go? So down here? Okay. To the here? Yeah, to the here? In here? It depends what I'm flying now too, isn't it? What's wrong with here? Look, if you go the same direction as the traffic, you've got massive open areas here. Here, I guarantee you, look, there's a big off-ramp here. There's going to be wires here. There's going to be people here. It's going to be messy. I've got a better chance here. In the cars, if I'm going the same with the cars, oh, go around me. It's not a great spot. It's not a great spot. All I'm saying is I want you to have a bit of a think about it, so that when it does go, you're not up there going up-da. Click. All right, so a lot of this is taken care of in your pre-flight planning. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. What's the weather, what's the route? You may go somewhere in a different route just to give yourself better options. Get a few more hours in your logbook, explain it away. Altitude and the airspeed, obviously the lower you are, the less options you got. The higher you are, the more options you got. But in a helicopter, there's a compromise between being too high and you've got an emergency and I had too much time to get it on the ground. It's a compromise. Flying around 1,500 feet and above is great, and I would be doing that. 2,500, 3,000 feet is great. Once I start getting above 5,000 feet, it's going to take me a bit of time to come down. Below 1,500 feet, noise, less options, all those sorts of things. It's a compromise. You guys figure it out. The wind, where is it coming from, the type of terrain. You either accept these risks or you plan around them. Click. So let's summarise this and we can call it quits. Helicopter crashes are actually very, very survivable. They just look fantastic on the news, don't they? When you think about the accidents we have, we either have stupid accidents that when in hindsight we look back and say, man, that should never have happened, and you can put that into a box. Then you have accidents that the guys got away with or got lucky with, and it wasn't necessarily their fault. Circumstances caused the accident. But in general, a lot of guys survive crashes. More helicopter pilots survive crashes than fixed-wing pilots. We're a very small, close-knit community. When we do lose one, we all know about it. We publicise it, we talk about it, we have safety forums about it. But in general, in my opinion, helicopters are actually quite safe, and they have an excellent survivability if you're doing the right things. Injuries, however, come from two areas: high G impact, from the dissipation of energy as the helicopter rolls, tumbles, and basically breaks apart around you. So that's where your injuries come from. So if we can get rid of this one, you just got to increase your chances by 50%. If you take care of that one, you've got a really good chance of surviving an accident. This one can be gotten rid of by good technique in the autorotation, understanding. If you can get it to 10 feet above the ground and crash from 10 feet, you've done your job. All right, the impact can be avoided by crashing gently. The ground is actually your friend, not your enemy. It's your best friend. And I can guarantee that, because the moment you crash something, when you get out, you'll kiss the ground before anything else. It's your friend. Fly that helicopter all the way to the termination point or to the ground, and then stop it with the flare and the collective pitch. Crash from 5 feet is going to be very survivable. Touching the ground nose high rather than nose low is preferred. Always wear your safety equipment. Always make sure you get your seating sorted out. Finally, in the real world, forced landing, Your survival is the key thing, not the condition of the helicopter at the end. We can replace that. That's it from me, guys.